The play on the field, the courts, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and promoters who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go behind the game with Patrick Klinger and Bill Robertson. Welcome to Behind the Game. I'm Patrick Klinger, president of Agile Marketing Partners. With me, as always, my co-host, a man who prefers to be shaken, not stirred, the commissioner of the Western Collegiate Hockey Association, Bill Robertson.
Hi, Patrick. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, as always, my friend. We have a great show today for everyone. Our very special guest on Behind the Game is a gentleman who has had a storied career as a book writer, a keynote speaker, and even a famous mascot. He's a super guy who has always been so upbeat in all of my dealings with him over the years. Please welcome our great friend, Mr. Ross Bernstein. Ross, welcome to the show Behind the Game.
Billy, Rob, Patrick, it is my profound honor to be on with you guys. I love you. I'm proud to call you my friends. This is really cool. Thank you. Love the show.
Well, we're going to jump right into it, Ross. We're going to rotate questions between Patrick and myself, and we look forward to your answers. A lot of people may not know a lot about you, and some people probably do, but you know, part of your background, from my view, is you've written nearly 50 books. You've keynoted conferences for Fortune 500 companies all over like 7 continents. You've been featured on ESPN, Fox News, CBS, the New York Times, and Wall Street Journal, amongst others. But what we really want to know is your time as Goldie Gopher at the University of the mascot. That's the most important question. We want to get that on the table right away.
Well, you're a hockey guy, and that was my my claim to fame. I was a walk-on to play hockey at the University of Minnesota back in the late 80s. I lasted about 5 minutes. I tried to take out our star player, Todd Richards, our team captain, thinking that would impress the coaches. Did not go well. I got cut, and they said apparently there was another job opening on the team, not quite as sexy as All-American defenseman, but close. It was the team mascot, as you alluded to. So I became Goldie, the giant smelly rodent. Had a lot of fun, got to entertain a lot of drunk fans. And as a senior, a publisher approached me about writing a book about all the trouble I'd gotten into, and it kind of spawned the idea. So I leveraged my graduate school money. I had 2 brothers go on to get Ivy League MBAs, and I begged my mom and dad to let me use my money to write and publish a book about the history of Gopher hockey from Goldie the Gopher's point of view. And they were convinced it was going to be a massive failure, but it turned out to be a hit. And nearly 50 books later, I somehow made a career out of it. So yeah, I owe it all to Coach Woog for cutting me back in the late 80s and launching my career.
Hey, Ross, you know, as Billy mentioned, you've spoken on 7 continents, which is astounding, which of course also means that you've spoken on Antarctica.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I hope you were paid by the mile to get there. But I mean, just the adventure of getting there must have been something. So tell us a little bit about that speaking experience and maybe some of the really unique experiences you've had around the world.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's fun. A lot of people don't know that. Most people think I'm just writing sports books, but yeah, the first big pivot for me came years ago when I could see that Borders was going to be gone and Walden Books was going to be gone and B. Daltons and Crowns. So the first pivot for me was transforming all of my content into something that I could monetize differently. And that was speaking. So I speak at about 120 conferences per year, and I love the international travel. That's really my passion. I love bringing my family with me. My daughter became Delta's youngest diamond medallion at 14 at one point because we were traveling so much. So we love international travel. And yeah, a couple of years ago, I had a few gigs in Santiago, Chile, and in Peru. So we decided to make a really cool trip out of it and head down to Patagonia. And there's a trip you can take to Antarctica. You fly over to terra firma, and then you get in a boat And my client was the cast and crew of a research vessel, which was pretty cool. But we got to spend a day on Shackleton's Island. If you're a history buff, that was pretty cool. Although I will say the penguin poop is overwhelming. People don't realize there's a million penguins on this island. But yeah, we spent a couple weeks down there, and I got to. I mean, it's a bucket list for everyone. For everyone who's there, it's their seventh continent. They want to do something really unique. And for me, it was being one of the only speakers in the world that can say I've spoken on all 7 continents. So it was definitely a trip of a lifetime. I highly recommend it.
Before I get to my next question, I want to ask you, teeling off what you just talked about, Ross, where is your favorite place in the world to go to speak, or where the best adventure was, and where was the best spot you took your family?
Oh, that's a great question. We love New Zealand. I speak a lot of New Zealand and Australia. Those are amazing places. But I'd say the most exotic place, I was speaking in Dubai a couple of years ago. And on the last day, I surprised my wife and kid. And we flew to Kathmandu, Nepal, and we chartered a helicopter. And we flew to Mount Everest. And we went up to base camp, about 20,000 feet. And our pilot said, "We have no oxygen. You can stay for about 7 minutes. Otherwise, you're all going to die." I said, 7's good. It was just enough time for a selfie, and we were out of there. But we love the adventures. We love going all over, whether it's China or Indonesia or other exotic places. Today I'm in Phoenix, so I mean I just kind of travel nonstop, and we just really embrace the lifestyle of being able to travel, and we love Minnesota. It's our home base, but anytime we can get away and go to fun places, we love the adventures.
Well, you originally made your mark, writing and producing 50 sports books, and I think there was a few more than that, and you've churned out over time. And then you pivoted into this motivational speaking mode. I want to know, and I'm sure Patrick does as well, are you ever going to pen another book, so to speak? And are you still interested in writing books? I know it's a different era now with books, and the revenue you can make is so different than it may have been several years ago. But have you thought about, I should write a book about blank?
Well, I won't say that I'll never say never, but I got to tell you, I don't miss that lifestyle. Back when you were, with the Wild, and Patrick, you were with the Twins, I was grinding. That was, it's so funny because in the speaker world today, all my colleagues and friends write books for vanity reasons, because it's an add-on they can sell at their events or to their clients. It gives them credibility. For me, that was my life. I mean, I was a maker of books. If I didn't write books, I didn't eat. If guys like you weren't kind enough to let me do book signings at the hockey lodge at the XL Energy Center, I wasn't going to make any money. So for me, I was just grinding, and that's what I love to do, and meeting and interviewing all these thousands of athletes. And thank God people like you guys gave me press passes where I was able to meet and interview so many amazing people and get these great stories and kind of develop this platform. But everyone who speaks for a living had to have a previous life. And that was my previous life. And I don't miss the deadlines. I don't miss the grind of all the book signings and the TV and radio and publicity. But I think there's some more books in me. I don't know what it'll be. It'll be a business book. It'll tie into the things that I focus on now, but always tied to sports. My most recent book is a book called Wearing the Sea. It's about leadership and about great captains. And Gretzky was on the cover of that book. And I love more books like that. And I did another book that you're familiar with called The Code, about fighting in hockey. And that got turned into a few documentaries and also a feature film with an Academy Award winning director. And I'm working on another project similar to that right now. So I think it's all about, morphing and pivoting, now doing events on Zoom, being in my basement, right? We all had to change and adapt and do different things. So I'm all about the adventure, and I don't know where it'll take me, but I'm always open to new ideas.
Ross, speaking of pivoting and morphing, when did you realize that you had a talent for public speaking and motivating people?
I don't know if I still do. When I was Goldie Gopher and I realized that I could entertain 10,000 drunk fans without being able to talk. And, because public speaking is most people's number one fear. They would statistically rather be eaten by a shark while being suffocated by a snake and eaten by a spider than get in front of a stage. But for me, we've all got our weird superpowers. And I get in front of groups now of 5,000-10,000 people, and I can entertain them for 60, 90 minutes, 2 hours. And I don't know, it's just something that turned out I was good at. I had no idea. You don't really know till you get thrown in the fire, I guess. But I enjoy it, and I enjoy, sharing wisdom from great people, smart people like you guys who I meet along the way, and get to share ideas on ways people can grow their business. And, I'm not a quote motivational speaker living in a van down by the river like a Tony Robbins who has seminars. I mean, all my clients are companies. For instance, I just saw, interestingly, a connection. 2 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. I was on the WCHA homepage, and I saw that Spire was one of their sponsors. Maybe brought to you by Patrick from your agency. I don't know, but I just keynoted Spire's big annual conference. So all my clients are companies, whether it's banks or pharmaceutical or medical device or industry, whatever. So they all want keynote speakers, and they all want ideas and ways they can think about customer experience and leadership and change management. So turns out there's lots of things we can learn from sports that apply to business. And that's what my program, the Champions Code, is all about. So I've just found different ways of connecting with people.
Ross, the pandemic almost a year ago to date shut down life as we know it. And, for you were so much involved in the travel at that time, in doing your live events in front of people, where I've seen you speak, and you are very motivating. You're very captive, and how to reach an audience. That's for sure. Now you've had to pivot again and really reach an audience via Zoom or through a camera lens, and that's much different than being in front of a live audience. How's the transition been for you? I know you're on the road right now in Phoenix, and you're going to be in Salt Lake City, and you're in front of live audiences, but it must be different. Certainly the forms of being in front of a camera versus being live.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, certainly being in front of groups now, they're smaller, they're hybrid events, but it's nourishment for the soul, man. Just being in front of actual human beings again. I think I did 70 virtual events this year, but it was a huge pivot. And luckily I was one of the early adopters. I mean, I had a gig last January. I was speaking in Shanghai, and people were getting sick, and we didn't really know anything about it, and we never got it, and I've still never got it, knock on wood. But transforming to virtual, it's hard because I'm an energy guy. I feed off of the audience. When one guy laughs, a bunch of people laugh, and you feed on that energy. You know how it is. You guys both, you're in front of audiences all the time, and you know how that goes. So one of the early things I did was I've got a good home studio, or worldwide headquarters, or as my mother likes to say, my basement. But one of the first things I did that really helped was I ran a second TV behind me, or next to me, where I could run my slides. And that was good. That allowed me to stand, to get up in the camera, to be animated, to bring that energy, and to deliver a live virtual keynote as opposed to a webinar where you just see my fat head and I'm sharing slides, which nobody wants to see. So that was the big thing first, and then to be able to bring that energy. And now it's crazy. I have an event next week with Cisco, big, gigantic Fortune 100 company, where I'll be on at 3 a.m. presenting to a group in Asia Pacific. So there's benefits. Now I can do 2, 3, 4 events in a day, whereas before you were limited. So there's pros and cons, but certainly the world is coming back. The hybrid model is going to be here for a while. But I'll tell you what, Billy Rob, events are changing. Your WCHA champion, Minnesota State University Mavericks, I'll be hosting an event there in 2 weeks for Greater Mankato Growth. 250 people live in the Mayo Healthcare arena. So a lot of my clients are looking for us as speakers to help them figure out solutions to their problems, and they want to get people together. So we're doing it safely and responsibly. You can't be outside, so we'll fill up a hockey arena. We'll be socially distanced. So, I had an event recently in California last month. We did it out in a vineyard outside Santa Barbara. So you have to get creative now, and I think that's the key. It's just finding solutions to problems and getting people together. Trade shows can't meet on Zoom. People want to be together, but we have to be responsible about it. So I'm trying to help do those things, and it's a win-win, man. I get to be back in the road, traveling and being in front of actual human beings.
I think the next time you're at a vineyard, you need to let Patrick and I know so we can jump in the suitcase and head out and bring some.
Done.
That's a great idea, Billy. I'm all for that. Hey, Ross, your program is entitled The Champions Code, Building Relationships Through Life Lessons of Integrity and Accountability from the Sports World to the Business World. Tell us, where did those messages and where do those stories that you share as part of your program come from?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so the program, the title is based on two best-selling series of books that I've written. The top series is a series of books where I was involved with both of you guys, Raising Stanley, Raising Lombardi, World Series winners. I did a whole series of books where I interviewed about 1,000 professional athletes and coaches who were all members of championship teams. They'd all hoisted that trophy. And the whole series is about what did it take to hoist it. And I was looking for the trends and metrics and patterns and analytics that were common among those teams. And the results are fascinating, much like Jim Collins did in his iconic book, Good to Great. So that's the champions part of the Champions Code. The code part is a series of books I wrote called The Code, which I talked about earlier, about the hockey code. It's about fighting, or the baseball code, where there's an iconic picture of Nolan Ryan giving Robin Ventura the business, right? He had been caught stealing signs and he drilled him. And it's not about fighting in hockey or why you get drilled in baseball or why you get, turned upside down in football. It's about what happens when you cross that line. There's an honor code, as you guys know, in sports, and it's a series of unwritten, unspoken rules. There's a fine line between cheating and gamesmanship in sports and business and life. And if you cross that line in sports, there's consequences. The hockey code says you must be held accountable if you take liberties with a smaller player, if you cheap shot a guy, if you hit a guy from behind, and you may lose some teeth, but you will learn a valuable lesson about respect and about the golden rule. So the Champions Code together, it's about winning with integrity. And in business, that means following your moral compass. It means winning the right way. And we've seen so many companies that have lost their way. Everyone from, Lance Armstrong to Bernie Madoff to Enron to WorldCom, the list goes on and on and on. You can get away with it in sports, whether it's a flop or a dive or something, some sneaky nefarious thing, and you can get away with it in business. But long-term, being a champion in my world means doing it the right way. And that's the message that I preach to companies. It's about how do you win the right way and do it with integrity.
There are certain reasons companies, sports organizations win consistently where others don't. And you've seen this on both sides of the fence, both those realms. How does a successful organization separate themselves from their competitors, from all the companies you spoke with? I'm sure you went into some of these meetings thinking everything was going to be a certain way, and it dramatically changed, and at the last second wanted you to make all these different adjustments. Tell us in your mind what makes a great company.
Yeah. I mean, just like you guys, understanding great culture in teams, the 87 and 91 Twins, they had that magic spark, right? TK, the manager, and the leadership from the top down and the bottom up, and your clubhouse guys, your veterans, Kirby and the G-Man and Bruno and everyone, as they say, rowing the boat together in the same direction, right? There's certain teams that, when the Wild made it to the run in 2003 against Colorado, and they had that, amazing stretch. There's certain magic moments in sports. And I think in business too, a company like Spire, I mean, Dan Stoltz, we know Dan, he's a great guy. You can tell why that's a successful organization, because there's leadership from the top down and the bottom up. And that's what's so interesting about how great companies do it. And I've had a chance to work with some great companies. I've worked with the Colorado Avalanche, and I've been able to speak to teams. The Detroit Red Wings brought me in to work with them. They had a stretch where they made the playoffs for 26 consecutive seasons. That's unheard of, and they did so in a city that filed bankruptcy, playing in the worst, crappiest, oldest, lowest revenue producing arena, the Joe, which, as you know, had no luxury suites, none of the other things that other teams had, but yet they had guys like Steve Yzerman and these amazing players and great coaches like Scotty Bowman who could, even with 100% turnover, they could still create that culture and that consistency to win over and over again. So I love studying guys like Tom Brady and figuring out just what it is that makes the great ones great. Not just pro sports, women, professional athletes, collegiate athletes, what makes them unique and how that applies. So it's a never-ending stream of content, and I love studying it and sharing it and putting it into practical use so people can enjoy it. I mean, sports has been I mean, look, all three of us are so lucky. We've been able to make our careers doing something that we're truly passionate about. And we've all changed. Billy, you've been with the Olympics, the, Anaheim Ducks, with Disney, with the Wolves, with the Wild. Now you're the commissioner of the WCHA. Patrick, you've had so many experiences with the Twins. Now you've created this incredible marketing agency and all the transformation. So we're, three guys who have just dumb luck, aw shucks, have gotten lucky in this world. But to be able to share sports, and that was the one common thread through the whole pandemic where people were so desperate. It was the one common thing that we could lean on. And it's going to continue to change for all of us. Who knows where we'll be in 5-10 years, but luckily sports will continue to be there. And we get to have a front row seat at all this. And that's what Behind the Game is about, right? Like talking to all these people that get a behind the scenes look. The best seat in the house.
Ross, you mentioned that you met over 1,000 professional athletes. You probably have met more successful business people than that. Performers who are really at the very top of their game. Who has left a lasting impression on you?
Well, for me, our heroes are the guys you grew up with. You get older, you get jaded, you meet these guys and you see the business side of it. But for me, Fran Tarkenton. I mean, in my backyard, I was Fran Tarkenton. Chuck Foreman, right? Alan Page, Harmon Killebrew, Kirby Puckett, Wayne Gretzky. Wow, right? To be able to meet these people, for me later in life, to have them write forwards for my books, just to get a chance to visit with them. It's like you have to pinch yourself. But I'm in awe. I always meet new people. I'm amazing. It's amazing to see. And, even look at Patrick Mahomes now, like Billy Rob, Patrick, we used to hang with that guy's old man, right? Now we're like, we feel so old, right? Now the next generation's coming up. But, it's the same thing in business. Great people are great people. How they treat people, the biggest compliment that I can have said to me is, wow, Ross, you're the same guy off stage as you're the same guy on stage. And I think you see that, Harmon Killebrew was that same guy in the clubhouse as he was, just seeing him, meeting him on the street or when he's out at a charity event. And I think that's the key, is just to be that same person. But we're lucky. We've all met great people. But for me, I think the great ones are when you're a little kid and then you meet them later and they don't disappoint you, right? They're actually as great. I'd be curious to ask you guys that same question. Who are your heroes as kids?
For me, Ross, many of the same people that you just mentioned. And, as a kid growing up in rural Winona, Minnesota, from working class family, the idea of ever meeting Harmon Killebrew or Rod Carew, Tony Oliva, my heroes, Alan Page, all people that I've had a chance to meet, get to know, in many cases become friends with. It was one of the highlights of my life. And to find out that they truly were as good people as you hope that they would be, really made it extra special.
And Paul Giel, the Winona Phantom, he wrote a forward in front of my books one time. What a legend he was. How about you, Billy Rob?
Well, I would say for me, you've mentioned a few of them. Growing up, Harmon Killebrew was my idol. I wanted to be Harmon Killebrew, and I got to meet him. And he actually called me when I was at the Wild. Said, "Hi, Bill, this is Harmon Killebrew," and I about fell over. Just couldn't get over. And then as I loved Fran Tarkenton with the Vikings. He was always my favorite. And then as I got a little older, I got very nostalgic being a St. Paul kid and growing up in Highland Park area. And for me, Dave Winfield, Jack Morris, but most importantly for me, it was Paul Molitor. I wanted to be Paul Molitor, as you know, and Patrick knows. And Patrick and I have played several with Molly, and I have to pinch myself when I'm in the cart with him sometimes because I ask him a lot of questions about life and about baseball. And I think he understands that he was my idol. And I'm sure he's laughed at that. But he's been a great motivational person for me. Messages from time to time. So I've carried that through.
I want to add one more guy, Neil Broughton. I had a full-blown stage 5 man crush on that guy as a kid. And a couple of years ago, I got to play in the Miracle on Ice fantasy camp. I'm the president of the Herb Brooks Foundation, and we're obviously very involved with all the 80 Olympians. And I got to play in a line with Neil Broughton, and it was just, I was like, what the hell am I doing here? It was awesome. It was so cool.
He's another great guy too, and very humble and
the
real regular Joe, so to speak. Hey, I know this. We're running close to being out of time, but you've delivered probably on average over 100, 125. addresses a year. Tell us what your preparation is like for delivering one, and how do you maintain not making sure it's a canned so-called speech all the time that if you saw it one time you'd see it again, or it's the same jokes like Dick Jankowski always gives.
Love those jokes. Yeah, it's a lot of work. You have to customize, and that means for me, there's a lot of phone calls with my clients. I go out and meet with them. I'll tour their facilities. I interview people, franchisees, general managers, and I get stories. As journalists, all three of us, we know that's our superpowers, to be able to find those stories, those little diamonds in the rough, those little nuggets of wisdom, and to be able to share those back so people know, wow, this guy really took the time to get to know us. But, now next week I've got 3 events with Cisco, and one is Asia Pacific. So I won't be talking about Harman Killebrew or Kirby Puckett. I'll be talking about Sachin Tendulkar, the greatest cricketer in India. I'll be talking about, maybe Yao Ming from China, or Sir Donald Bradman, one of the greatest batsmen in Australia. And then the next day I'll be on in Europe. So I'll be talking about, soccer players from Europe and things that are important to them. That's the thing. Sports is a universal language, whether I'm talking rugby in New Zealand or cricket in South Africa. People speak that language, but it's definitely, you have to customize now, or you just fall into that rut of, it's just a canned speech. And that's definitely what separates me, is to be able to find those stories and to go out and take the time and do it. And it's a lot more work, but that's what you have to do.
Hey, Ross, unfortunately, we are out of time. I mean, that was a rocket fast
great
conversation. Bill and I could chat with you all afternoon. I wish we could chat with you all afternoon, but unfortunately, we're out of time. Billy, it's great to see you. Ross, truly a privilege to have you on the show. We'd love to have you back again someday. And we want to thank all of you for watching Behind the Game. We'll see you next time.